MAGA is in full-blown disarray, with multiple Republican politicians, including Speaker Mike Johnson, publicly tripping over themselves and each other in a desperate attempt to conceal Donald Trump's latest, dumbest controversy. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, I have several clips to show you, and they are painfully awkward. But before I do, to get yourself in the right headspace, I want you to imagine you've made a mistake, a dumb mistake, a legit mistake. You shouldn't have made it, but it's not the worst thing you've ever done. However, in a desperate attempt to conceal it from an authority figure or from others, like your siblings, your parents, your teachers, you make it so much worse. Well, that's exactly what happened here with convicted felon Donald Trump, but I'm going to let Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News, who broke the story, explain the situation.
Let's bring in Jake Sherman of Punchbowl News. He's got some reporting for us on what happened inside that meeting. Jake, what can you tell us?
Yeah, it was typical Donald Trump, Katie, in which, this was billed as Governor Kasich said, a moment of unity and a moment of getting on the same page for policy and a host of other things. That wasn't what it was about. It was a long kind of ramble about various things he likes and doesn't like and people he likes and doesn't like. He talked about Nancy Pelosi's daughter allegedly telling him that they would be good in a relationship or a good match, which one of Pelosi's daughters immediately said that's not true. He said, as has gotten a lot of publicity, and we broke this, that he doesn't like Milwaukee. It's a horrible city, he says. The campaign has pushed back on that, but it's amazing to see, Katie. All of the people in the room have a different explanation. Either he said it, he didn't say it, he said it, but he meant this, he said it, but he meant that. He was actually talking about the park in Milwaukee. I mean, Katie, you and I have been through.
So you kind of get what happened, right? Donald Trump, a convicted felon, an adjudicated fraudster, an adjudicated rapist, said something wildly inappropriate and insensitive about Milwaukee, a city in a purple state, battleground state, Wisconsin, that Donald Trump probably needs to try to win. He won it in 2016, lost it to President Biden in 2020. And it's also the site where the Republican National Convention is going to be hosted in mid-July. So again, it is insensitive, it is stupid, it is alienating. But the Republican response to it was so clumsy and awkward, it made it so much worse. And we're going to start with the top ranking, the most powerful elected Republican in office, Mike Johnson, a supposed devout man who would never tell a lie because it's against his Christian ethics, lying his ass off on the Fox propaganda network to Sean Hannity's audience.
Just settle one thing once and for all here. Did President Trump, has been attributed to him that he took a shot at Milwaukee? Did he do that?
No, I didn't hear it, and I was sitting right next to him. I introduced.
Can we just settle one thing?
Okay, so Mike Johnson, a man, I think in his 50s, right? I mean, he's relatively young, certainly compared to the two leading candidates. He said, no, of course not. I didn't hear it, and I was sitting right next to him. Okay, Mike. The biggest problem with that is that the comment was confirmed by Donald Trump himself. That's kind of awkward.
Democrats are also hitting you on this comment that you made about Milwaukee, the host city for the RNC, for the convention, and they seem to believe that you said that it was a horrible city. Can you just nip us in the bud and clarify what you meant?
Well, I think it was very clear what I meant. I said we're very concerned with crime.
Democrats are also...
So he did confirm that he said it. He just confirmed on Fox News that he did say that remark, but he says, listen, I was referring to crime, and we'll talk about that. But that means that Speaker Johnson needs to have his hearing checked, or perhaps we also need to question his cognitive fitness if he didn't hear or process what Donald Trump happened to say while sitting next to him. Or perhaps Johnson's cognitive abilities and his hearing are perfectly fine, and he's a liar. So that makes sense because he's, of course, a Republican politician. But he's not the only one who went on the media to lie about the situation. Here's a Republican congressman being called out for it by the press, and see how he crumbles as well.
Will you acknowledge that these words at least came out of his mouth? The context is different, but did he say this?
He wasn't talking about the city. He was talking about specific issues in the city. I think it was horrible that a 9-year-old boy was killed on the north side of Milwaukee yesterday. We've had challenges in the city as it relates to the public school system. The people of Milwaukee are terrific, and there's no place better to live than the state of Wisconsin. And so this is simply the media trying to not talk about the issues and the challenges that the city of Milwaukee faces.
What context do you place it in? What was he referring to? Was it crime? Was it the elections? I've heard all of the above.
We're having a broad conversation about the challenges we face as a country, in particular, the challenges that we've seen in Milwaukee. Just recently, the head of elections in Milwaukee had to be replaced. We've seen challenges with crime. Again, a 9-year-old boy was killed early this morning. And we've seen challenges as it relates to the public schools in the city of Milwaukee. There are real challenges in Milwaukee that need to be addressed. It was a broad conversation covering a lot of topics in a lot of cities, but broadly speaking, here is what's important is Wisconsin is an amazing place to live.
Great spin by this Republican congressman, but as Aaron Frischner pointed out, again, it's a contradiction because they were initially denying that he ever said it in the first place. So Jake Sherman points out, he says, so far, I've had Republicans tell me that Trump was speaking about Milwaukee generally, the crime rate, and election integrity. Like always, Trump said what he said, and people are going to hear whatever they want to hear. Derek Van Orden, a Republican, says another classic example of shitty reporting by a Democratic Party shill pretending to be a journalist. Donald Trump was specifically referring to the crime rate in Milwaukee. But again, they've been referencing elections. So Representative Glenn Grothman told Trump made these comments when speaking about the election. Grothman said Trump was concerned about the election in Milwaukee and felt we need to do better in urban centers around the country. You saw what Derek Van Orden had to say. Brian Steele, the person who was in the clip that we just played, he initially says, I was in the room. Donald Trump did not say this. There is no better place than Wisconsin in July. But you saw the clip. Then he says, okay, well, Trump actually did say it, but he was referring to crime. Here's another explanation, Jake Sherman says, for Trump dumping on Milwaukee. So now we're up to 4 different explanations. The GOP appears to be scrambling to spin. A convention spokesperson told me Trump was referencing the ongoing political game the city and county are playing with Pierre Marquette Park. Despite concerns being raised months ago, the city has still not designated a First Amendment zone. So now it's again about a park. Again, here's another explanation. Trump said it, but he was referring to election integrity and didn't say anything about the citizens of Milwaukee. No one said he said anything about the citizens or community there. They're referring to Claudia Tenney. President Trump was responding directly to my question about the lack of election integrity. You see where they constantly trip over themselves? Grothman, somebody we referenced just a second ago, he later says he was confused by the mixed messages from Wisconsin's delegation and reiterated Trump was referring to election issues. I guess you can take it however you want to take it. So you see what's going on here? They're tripping over themselves in a desperate attempt to cover for Donald Trump's motor mouth, his inability to censor himself, his refusal to not say anything alienating and insensitive. He speaks in hyperbole all the time and always in the strongest. He always says X is the worst, X is horrible, X is the best. Well, this is what happens when you talk like that, when you speak in such an undisciplined fashion. And the GOP is scrambling around him to try to clean it up. And they're making it worse to the point where it becomes national news, and not just national news, but news in Milwaukee. So the Milwaukee, Wisconsin Journal-Sentinel, which is the biggest news outlet in Milwaukee, the headline, the front page news, the top line, Milwaukee, horrible, according to Donald Trump. That's probably not good for a state that you're trying to win over. Again, a battleground state. In response to this, I want to play you some of what Democrats had to say. So this is the mayor of Milwaukee when asked to respond to Trump.
Well, Donald Trump wants to talk about things that he thinks are horrible. All of us lived through his presidency, so right back at you, buddy. I'd say that.
So great energy from the mayor of Milwaukee. You also have Representative Gwen Moore. She went on MSNBC and she roasted Trump. This is what she had to say.
I just want to say this. A few weeks ago, I had a meeting with our police chief. And, crime has gone down all over America. And we're really proud of the fact that crimes like murder and rape have gone down in double digits. And one of the biggest problems we have in Milwaukee right now, and I'm, not poo-pooing it, but it's reckless driving. And again, I don't know many people in Milwaukee who have 34 felony counts against them.
Well, Donald
so
Trump,
our crime rate sure is going to go up when he joins us in Milwaukee.
There you go.
July.
Oh, that's right.
So because Donald Trump is a convicted felon with 34 felony counts, The crime rate, she says, will spike in Milwaukee when he visits for the Republican National Convention. Yeah, and again, folks, I mean, just watching the Republicans, he didn't say it. He did say it. He did say it, but he was referring to elections. He said it, but he was referring to crime. He said it, but he was referring to a local park dispute. That's how you know Republicans are lying. And they're so used to lying with impunity and not having to be particularly clever about it, right? Because you got to think, in the right-wing echo chamber that is the Fox propaganda network, they will launder the GOP's lies with impunity, right? You don't have to be particularly cunning or consistent because Fox will do it for you. But here they were caught flat-footed. And as a consequence, this is now making news both in a national way and in the specific locale where they need it the least, where it is the most damaging. And again, this story from Raw Story, slimy liar, critics level Speaker Mike Johnson for denying Trump's Milwaukee dig. And they also point out, too, that Stephen Chung, who is a very controversial and very hateful spokesperson for the Trump campaign, again, was one of the people who denied it as well. It's total BS, he says. But again, as a consequence, people are thrashing Mike Johnson in particular for supposedly being a very good, devout Christian and yet openly prostrating himself, and I would say prostituting himself and his faith and his integrity on behalf of Donald Trump for pure political expediency. There's no telling how this will turn out for Trump and with respect to Wisconsin and Milwaukee in particular, but I can't imagine it's helping, although it will be funny to see how the Fox propaganda network, right-wing media, and MAGA Republicans try to spin it now. The rest of us should just keep the pressure up and force them to awkwardly contend with it. Let me know what you think in the comments.